All right. Well, you'll be in the back chat. And we can just talk. I don't think you're going to hear.
You hit the notification.
This,
it just gives you a reply entry box right there.
Okay. So I'm not piping my desktop audio back through Discord. So you won't have to listen to this, but while I'm quiet, you'll know what I'm doing. But if you watch the stream, you'll see what I'm doing. So anyway, I just started streaming.
No other way to thumbs down.
Yeah, exactly. So I did just start streaming. So if anyone shows up, I'll check back on the chat every now and then. But I am going to be editing a podcast in Audacity. This is what I usually use to edit the DLN Xtend podcasts. And this is just me working through editing. And I'm a couple hours in editing already, but it's slow because I'm methodical and it's probably annoying. So I don't blame you if you check this out for a few minutes and you're like, yeah, nope, not for me. But if you have any questions about what I'm doing, how I'm, using Audacity, stuff like that, feel free to ask and I'll come back and check the chat. And I have Adam here with me. So he's going to keep me company.
That's what I do.
And if anyone wants to join voice chat, feel free. We're on the Discord, on Biddle Discord, just in general chat.
You're not welcome.
Well,
there's no room. Hey, Vince. Man, it's a fun day today.
Yeah, you've been working on your project. What's going on with
the
that?
notification. It just gives you a reply
to be done, to be honest.
entry box right there.
I don't know. I'm kind of growing weary of it, but it's coming along. Basically moving a few thousand nodes into a different monitoring system.
Fun.
And having to sort of recreate the other monitoring system. So we're moving from an old Nagios instance to a new Prometheus instance. And those two systems could not be more different. Like it's something. And at the same time I'm having to conjure up a new workflow for my team in terms of the way we handle actually managing these projects, because our old ways don't really apply here. So
gotcha. So do you you have to come up with this new monitoring system and then when it's ready switch over at some point?
So the deadline is March 1st.
Okay.
I've been working on it since September. But a good portion of that time was me actually like learning the software, learning how it's all put together, getting so up to speed that I can teach the rest of my team how the software works, how to write stuff for the configs for the software, how to do all that.
You were telling me about trying to do something with GitHub or something that you could, or just Git itself.
Yeah. So once we get everything kind of in the system as it is, managing it going forward will actually be fairly automated. So our plan is to we have a GitLab instance that we self-host at work.
Okay.
And we're going to use the CI/CD pipeline stuff for it. So the idea would be that once you push your changes to Git, and then if there's like a merge to a certain branch, you can run an automated pipeline using GitLab CI to like build a temporary, for example, we could build like a temporary Docker container that with the tools we need, and then like test the software, validate the syntax, all that kind of stuff before doing anything, and then move into a stage where it's actually deployed to the server automatically. So using like Ansible or something, we can run Ansible in these like temporary containers and then deploy our stuff with Ansible and then destroy the temporary container. That'll allow us to using Git and using GitLab will allow us to track changes, allow us to validate changes before they're made. Allows us to build a testing pipeline. So not only like syntax linting and all of that, but we can actually have a like staging branch that automatically deploys to a test instance of the server, or can even do something like with Terraform and actually spin up a test instance of the VM that we use with all the stuff that we have in it, and then test it to make sure it all works before pushing it to our production VM. There's a lot of really great automation, really great testing and validation tools and stuff we can use. And I want to go with that going forward because we have had some pretty catastrophic things happen before when people were not careful. So with this, we can, when they do a merge request for their code for the other branches, whoever the maintainer is can then go and review the code, look at the diffs, find out what's changed, etc. And we can, make sure that things don't get in that shouldn't get in. And the advantage of having a Git CI/CD pipeline, we can, if there's an issue, we can then revert to a previous commit, and the automated deployment will just overwrite the old stuff the current stuff with the old stuff that we knew worked. So
you mentioned the automation. So is the point that when you post something new to your GitLab repository that it recognizes there's a change and then it will
so you can have the CI/CD pipeline kind of activate based on different things. So like pushing to a certain branch or merging or whatever, that kind of thing. You can have it automatically do things based on the action within GitLab.
That's pretty sweet. So you obviously have to be pretty careful about what you're publishing then and who has access to do that, right?
Yeah, so everybody would have access to their own branch within the project, within the repo. And so they would push to their own branch, and then they would do a merge request from their branch to a staging branch. The maintainer of the project, being someone like me or my boss, would then go and review like, hey, this doesn't look right, or this looks fine, or whatever, and approve or decline the merge request. And if we approve the merge request, their changes get merged into the staging branch code. That deploys a test server and everything, and we test it out there. If that validates and is fine, they can do a merge request from staging to master. Then once it's to master, it gets pushed to production.
Nice. And then you have the ability to roll back and all that fun stuff.
Correct. And we also have like a nice trail of commits and what's changed, who changed what, who did this, issue tracking, things like that. So
it's basically taking the check-in, check-out, and the ability to add comments and all of that stuff with Git, and then rolling that into your automation process. So that's pretty slick.
Correct. Yeah.
So you're on target for March then?
Maybe. I have to say yes, because yeah, I'm on target.
All right, we'll say then yes. It's a big yes.
Yeah, it's.
But you've learned a lot of stuff though, which is cool.
Correct. Yeah, a lot of stuff.
And that's like
Prometheus is a pretty awesome system, but it's very different.
Well, and I know that you don't like to bring your work home with you, and you work hard when you're at work and all of that. But I know you also can get. I certainly got bored a lot of times in IT when you do the same things over and over. So special projects are kind of fun because they do give you that opportunity to try things and look at a problem a different way maybe. And I know that you, being that like black sheep Linux guy, in a Windows world. How much of this is going to be publicized in terms of like, you think you'll get any ire from this or?
No, I think I'll actually get a lot of like, that's neat. Because the advantage of Prometheus is when it collects all the data, it stores it as a time series database. So you can then query that time series database with a tool like Grafana, and Grafana can create dashboards that people can view with like graphs and tables and all this stuff of of all the information they might need for their stuff, right? So we can like create a dashboard for like the different for like switches, for example, like network switches with all the information like temperature, CPU, bandwidth, memory, all that good stuff. And that dashboard can either be shared as a link or just in general on Grafana. And so like the network team can just go into their dashboard and see all their information they might need on their endpoints, or the server team can look into things, or business apps can look into things, or we have a guy who handles just power stuff, so he can look into the UPSs and all that. So being able to take all the data that we're collecting through Prometheus and put them in actionable and very easy to interpret way in Grafana will basically make our team a rock star team among the organization, because suddenly all of the data that they don't have insight into, they now have an easy to look at, easy to digest dashboard to view thing.
Is it just a web-based dashboard?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. Well, I'm excited to hear how that turns out. And I think it's excellent that you get a chance to do some different things and to, hopefully it does turn out that you guys are the rock stars and you can start to show more and more of the value of Linux and open source stuff. And, maybe some of those naysayers that are quick to dismiss it have less, less ground to stand on when it comes to that stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm going to do a couple minutes of editing here. If folks want to ask, watch this, ask questions, I'll warn you ahead of time, it's going to get pretty annoying because it's just me looping through audio, making cuts and trims. And so you're going to hear a lot of the same things over and over. It's just the way I edit. I know a lot of people don't really go to the fine tooth comb detail that, I'm going to go through here, but I have a really hard time listening to my own voice. And when I'm putting out a podcast that's going to be out there essentially forever and never change, I don't know. I want to put a little extra time in up front. And so I probably overdo this way more than other people might. And I apologize if watching this is really annoying. But I've warned you, and you can troll me if you want. But so this is Audacity. I've got my track as audio, Nate's track as a separate audio track, and then this is a label track. So as I go through the different sections, I'm labeling them. And basically what this lets me do is come back later, visually separate them and see where the different segments are, but then also come back later and create the show notes and things like that. So if I look back at the last episode, what I'll always do is create like of course you would open the wrong thing. Create a markdown document with all of the description of the episode, the, titles, all that stuff. And then this chapter section, which is what I embed into the podcast so that you can quickly jump through the sections. I'm just taking that from here. So I'm kind of I'm kind of saving myself a little bit of time by adding these labels in as I go. And so Nate and I record separately. So I'll be in Audacity recording my end, and then he records his end, and then he sends it to me, or I send it to him. We use SyncThing usually to get the files back and forth, but that way we can get the best audio possible. We also use Mumble as a fallback, but it only records at 96K. So it's not awful if we had to use it. If you listen to the Wendy Hill interview I did, we had to do it through Mumble. She wasn't able to record on her end and send it to me. So it was, you can definitely tell the audio quality, like when I switch from Nate and I then to her interview, it's a little off. Now I used my audio, so it's really more her audio, and 96 isn't bad, but it's just there's some compression and stuff that Mumble does. It's not great. So anyway, so he sends me my track, or I send him his track, yeah, either way around. And then I import everything, then I have to line everything up. And then you'll see as I go through here, I'm just looking for sections where we either repeat ourselves or stumble, or, for time constraints, I'm trying to keep this to half an hour. I've almost never hit that. And it's very difficult because we recorded this last night and we ended up with an hour and 40 minutes of content. And some of it is just us chatting, but a lot of it really is content. So I would say there's probably a solid hour and 10, hour and 20 minutes in there of that hour and 40. And so now my job is to not only edit, but editorialize and kind of say like, okay, this is worth keeping, this isn't. And I'll usually do a first pass edit and get it down to whatever it is, the actual content. And then from there, I will have to go back. It'll be, let's say it's going to be 50 minutes long or something. So I've got 20 minutes of, can I actually go and take out some of the superfluous content, maybe cut out some things that weren't as strong as other things, and keep all the segments, or do I have to actually cut segments? And so sometimes I have to just look at these labels and say, okay, this piece is enough, for me to get this down to a reasonable amount of time. But I try to do the editing to keep everything, but sometimes it just doesn't work. And it's really a painstaking process. And I don't know if anybody's ever tried to do this. Maybe I'm just being completely ridiculous about it, but it really takes a lot of time and effort to, plan for it, to record it, and then to mix it down. And then from here, once I get all this done, I'll upload it to Auphonic, and it does its audio magic. I get the MP3 back, and then I put it up on Fireside, and all of this information in here, I'll go ahead and post out there. And going into this, never having done a podcast before, I really didn't understand how much work was involved in doing this. And I enjoy it. I really do. And I enjoy working with Nate and putting this out there and all the positive feedback we've seen. But had I known going in, I would have probably planned a little better for my time and the level of effort that goes into it. So, check back on the chat. Yes, DLN sneak peek. Yes, it's going to be riveting. Let's see. Appreciate the time and effort. Yeah, I like it. I mean, when I can put something out that I'm happy with, and Nate and I mean, of course it's us, but we agree together that we think it's getting better, that the content is good, that our conversations are good, and that's a encouraging sign for us. If we were floundering, if we just didn't feel it, if it was a struggle, it was really hard to, come up with the energy or the enthusiasm, that would be a very bad thing. And we're just not in that situation, thankfully. So, all right, hit the notification. Let's zoom back in here. And I'm in the KD 518 LTS release section where we're talking. And so here's where it's going to get really annoying. So I'm just going to edit for a few minutes and then I'll check back with you guys. As I'm doing this, I'm using a lot of keyboard shortcuts and scroll shortcuts to zoom in, zoom out, scroll back and forth, and grab sections of audio, delete out. And if you see me do something that you haven't seen before, you're interested in learning more about, just let me know and I can explain it a little better. I tend to use, just as up front, the same sort of set of effects. I've already come through, boy, I can't talk tonight. I've already come through here and set a compressor to get our audio as similar as I can. I've done background noise removal for both of us because he has a lot of fans in his Nate cave in the cubicle that make just enough underlying noise that you can hear it from time to time. So I'll isolate a section of his audio where there's just enough of a pause in there that I can grab it, and then I'll use the noise reduction filter effect to you first train it and say get the noise profile from wherever you can grab that background noise. Once you train it, then you come back in and select the audio, and what I'll do is just select the entire track and apply that, and then that way it just cleans up the entire track. Same thing for me. As hard as I try, I still have a little bit of noise floor on my mic, and so I'll do the same thing. So there's a couple of things I do just to start with, but then from there I'll go through and you'll see me use truncate silence a lot. And basically for all of these long gaps in here, I tend to think a lot when I talk. As you've seen on Biddle, I have these really long pauses, and I'll say and a lot. So I try to clean up a lot of that, and so I'll clean that up, but then I'll use a truncate silence that will just automatically pull these silent pieces out, so I don't have to literally, highlight and delete every single one. But other than that, that's what I'm going to be doing, and I'll check back one more time. And yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. Entry box right there. The same thing, smartphone, using the mobile client. If you hit the notification, it just gives you a reply entry box right there. The same thing happens now on Plasma's notifications. The pop-up. So I'm good with that, and I'm gonna just truncate the silence there. You see it just squishes it down. The same thing happens now on Plasma's notifications. The pop-up shows up if you're using native so you have to actually enable
I want you guys to write how you're feeling right now in no less than 3 emoji.
Do it. Pop-up shows up if you're using native so you have to actually enable the pop-up shows up if you're using native so you have to actually so you have to actually enable you actually have to enable so you have to where is it? You actually have there we go. You actually have to enable native notifications in Telegram itself. But when you do, then if Plasma pops up a notification, it just has a text entry box right there, like the mobile client. You type in it, boom, you're done.
You know what this makes me think of?
What's that?
It makes me think of the episode of The Simpsons where Ralph was into Lisa, and like Bart is like freeze framing the video. Like he's like, you can see the moment where his heart rips apart. Like, he's like freeze framing. You see like Ralph. He's like, oh.
This is one of those things that I've said to my wife. Like, if someone were to ask me to do this for them, how much would I actually want to be paid to edit a podcast episode? Because if it wasn't me and Nate talking and I was listening to our conversation, if I had to do this critically for someone else and I wasn't part of the conversation, I think it would be even harder than it is. And I mean, I know there's lots of people that do this as a living, right? And
yeah,
it's just, man, I don't know that they're getting paid enough, because it is, it is something. But you do tend to get in the zone. Like after a while, I've done this enough times now that I've actually gotten much better at it than I was before. When I was first using Audacity, I didn't know any of the keyboard shortcuts. And fortunately, Audacity has just a ton. Like pretty much everything that is in a menu can be assigned to a keyboard shortcut, which is fantastic, because then once I realize, oh, these are the same 10 things I'm doing all the time, let's just, have a hotkey and save myself the clicking. So a lot of times, I don't know, I think I'm getting better. And Audacity is such an amazing tool. I can't believe this is, just a open source, free tool that's out there. I've been trying like DAWs, digital audio workstations, and I've tried other tools to try to do this same sort of stuff. And Audacity just has such a great feature set with all the effects and everything else that's built in here. So I don't know if it's the best option or if people don't really see this as a serious editing tool. I think a lot of people use it just for very basic tasks, but having come to use it in a much deeper way, I appreciate it all the more. So, but I'm glad I gave you a smile with the Simpsons episode.
And not to sound like Rocco about pixels being out of place, but I have noticed that there's something more visually appealing about the pop-ups too.
The last few days of work, so today and a couple days last week, I've actually moved almost everything that I do at work to my iPad Pro.
You're going back down this road again, huh?
I am. And it's pretty great, man. It's pretty awesome. Like it works way better than
what was the
it
thing
would.
you said you had a way to install Linux?
Yeah, so it's
headless Linux or something.
Oh no, it's a beta app called ISH or iShell or whatever you want to call it. So it's you can think of it like WSL1 is in Windows. So it's Linux, but it's translating NT calls to Linux calls for the Linux environment, right? Similar idea. So it's translating the iOS like the Darwin kernel and all that stuff, translating those calls into Linux calls for within this like environment. So it's based on Alpine. So the end result is it's a completely usable like Linux environment. I can install like Ansible and Docker and all kinds of stuff within it on the iPad.
So
it's kind of nuts.
Can you do like SSH and stuff with it?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you could.
Well, I mean, I already had a shell that could do that, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
you had a shell, but did the shell?
That.
Does the shell have all of the Linux? Well, once you're SSH, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. But no, this one it's Alpine, so you just use APK and you can install a whole manner of tools that you normally would get on Linux, and it's like it is a Linux install. Like it has the Linux like stuff underneath, the file system. I haven't tested to see if it has like an init system or anything, but it's pretty neat.
Well, you've been trying this tablet as a laptop replacement thing for a while, so I know you kind of gave up on it for a bit, so I'm surprised to hear you came back to it a little.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is I think laptop replacement is the wrong word, right? That's kind of what I realized. It's the wrong way to look at it. It's not going to replace your laptop, but it's a really great augmentation to your existing workflow. Because the form factor of the iPad, the battery life of the iPad, the fact that there's no fans and it doesn't burn your lap is pretty great. It's really portable, and you can flip the keyboard around or whatever, and use it like a tablet.
Skybear says laptop companion.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's kind of nice that I can do like 90% of the stuff that I would normally do on a laptop, I can do on the iPad. But there's certain things that I can do on the iPad that I can't do on the laptop, right? So things like having like simple things like having an app for ordering food or something, right? It's a much better interface to go through a menu and everything on there instead of going through a web page. I can use things like Apple Pay inside the app, log in with Face ID, those kind of things. So like the convenience of iPad OS for things that are kind of cumbersome to do on a laptop or on a desktop.
And ultimately the portability, right? I mean, it's just...
Yeah, so
yeah.
The same device that I sit at my desk and work on code and SSH into servers with is the same device that I can kick back in my chair when I'm on a break and watch some YouTube on it. Like I don't have to, and it's about ergonomics too, right? Because like leaning forward, you generally lean forward when you're working at a desk, whereas with the tablet, I can actually like lean back, kind of do that. If there's like say like some chart or diagram that I have to make for work, I can easily show somebody, like walk up and like with the iPad in my hand, like, hey, check this out, right? They can manipulate it, they can turn it, they can scroll, they can do whatever they need to, instead of like, oh, here's my laptop, good luck. Like,
no, that's absolutely true. And I can think back of the times when I was in that situation where I'd have to, try to show somebody something on a laptop. And it was never easy because I was always a 17-inch laptop, giant, heavy thing.
And so there are other tools like the Apple Pencil, for example. I don't use that typically, but I'll be bringing it to work tomorrow because gonna have to explain to my colleagues like how a lot of the data flow and everything of how Prometheus works and how alerts are triggered and all this other stuff. And having a laptop doing that's kind of what are you gonna use, Paint? Like, but having the graph on say an omnigraphal chart, I can use the Apple Pencil to like draw and like annotate and things like that while I'm doing it. And with USB-C port, I can just plug in a regular USB-C dongle and put it on a monitor and they see what I'm writing on the tablet.
Yeah, it definitely has its advantages. And like you said, if you're not considering it a true replacement for a laptop and using it for that purpose, then you're not going to be, disappointed if you try to do something that's beyond that use case.
Correct. And yeah, there are things that, it excels at, and there are things that the MacBook excels at. And there's a lot of overlap. And the fact there's a lot of overlap is kind of nice because it's like, well, I want to, chill out with my laptop now, or I want to use the iPad, and I can do a lot of the same stuff on both. And, it just depends on what type of workflow I'm doing, right?
Yeah. Well, let me know how it goes I'm curious to see how it goes tomorrow, but just as you move through, I think you mentioned some things that are definitely strong points, but I'm curious to see that because I know when I go meet with a customer, a tablet sometimes, unless you have a Pro, so it's a much larger screen. I think that's part of it. I have 10-inch tablets, so they're good for personal use, but sometimes for trying to show other people things, it's maybe not the most ideal size.
Mm-hmm.
But it just makes
mine's the 12.9. So
right. So I just wonder if maybe if I chose to take that instead of my laptop to a customer meeting, like I have a smaller iPad and a small Android tablet. It may not be as effective. So
yeah. So the key with mine being the iPad Pro is that I have the keyboard attached, the keyboard case thing that's attached to it. I have the Apple Pencil. I have more than just just the iPad, and so there I can do productive things, so to speak, on there, but I can also kick back and do other things. So yeah.
Cheesy.
It's just a combination, right? It's really great. But cheese, like the 2-in-1. So a 2-in-1 laptop doesn't have the battery life of an iPad, and it definitely doesn't have the standby time of an iPad. So if I need to, if I put my iPad away and I'm doing something for hours, I can come back and maybe 1 or 2% of the battery is drained. And that's spectacular for me because my iPad Pro lasts me all day, like constantly working. I think I get around 10 or 11 hours of battery life of constant working out of it. And if I, put it away for any given time, it almost just freezes itself in time. It's pretty great. And also as Starbuck mentioned the weight. Yeah, the iPad. I have the 12.9, so it's not the lightest iPad in the world, but it's way easier than handling like even a 13-inch or 2-in-1.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And, a camera on the back, surprisingly useful, because if I need to scan QR codes or if I need to scan a document, like if somebody hands me a paper document, I can use an app to scan the document into my iPad or into, storage or whatever. And that's super useful.
It really is. And it's one of the things about a Linux phone that has made me wonder how well that's going to work at first. Because I know with my phone, not only for just random documents, but I'm thinking of like banking apps where you scan your check or, where QR code scanners, stuff like that. I know it'll get there, but I'm just wondering at first how much of that I would miss.
Yeah.
So anyway. All right. I'm going to do a couple more minutes here just to annoy everybody. And like I said, we're on Discord, Biddle Discord. If folks want to join the voice chat, you're more than welcome. So jump in if you'd like.
You better join lest you get the belt.
Oh, you've heard from Adam. Get on here quick. All right. Done.
And not to sound like Rocco about pixels being out of place, but I have noticed that there's something more visually appealing about the pop-ups too now. Maybe it's just me, maybe I'm not grasping it, or maybe I missed it before, but something seems different, that the position of like the thumbnail icon and the text just look better now. It looks like it's just kind of little things were cleaned up.
There were a lot of things that we talk over each other. Real quick. So, yeah.
So yeah, Skybear, you mentioned the Pinebook Pro, and that is an interesting device. But also there's it's not just a matter of having just an ARM processor, because like I've had an ARM Chromebook before, but it didn't have nearly the battery life or standby time that my iPad did. And I think it's a matter of iOS and iPadOS are just, they're mobile operating systems in the sense that they're designed to sort of suspend apps, and there's a lot of power management and app power management that goes into the system that a desktop operating system doesn't necessarily think about. Like, you don't really suspend an app in Linux so much as you suspend the machine.
Since someone mentioned Nate, I'll bug him and see if he's around. He's probably busy, but. So if you follow the This Week in KDE posts from Nate Graham, that was something that they, over several iterations, actually, they added some padding. They changed the sort of layout and placement. Yeah, see all those pauses? They drive me crazy. Something that they, over several iterations, actually, they added some padding. So they changed the silence, sort of layout and placement of the buttons. Truncate silence to just get rid of all that, because it just annoys the hell out of me. My videos, I use something called Jump Cutter that does essentially the same thing, but for videos.
So I can't remember who it was, but I remember somebody who used to do Linux podcasts, and like, he was aggressive with the silence cutting to the point where the podcast didn't sound like natural. It sounded like nobody ever breathed.
Right. Well, I mean, so this section, if you listen to this without the cuts, the This Week in KDE posts from Nate Graham, that was something that they, over several iterations, I mean, you see how that sounds, and then the same thing. You follow the This Week in KDE posts from Nate Graham. That was something that they, over several iterations, I mean, it's subtle, but if I leave all those pauses in there, it really is annoying because it's just slow.
Correct, yeah.
And so I'm trying really hard not to over trim. So you notice a lot of times I won't even trim Nate because he doesn't really need it. You know, this section through here where he's pausing.
Two now? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm not grasping it. Two now.
So I mean that kind of stuff. Like those pauses are natural. They're not him thinking. They're him more or less. I don't know.
Pacing.
Yeah, it's pacing. Whereas I just stop and I think, and I'm terrible at that. Hopefully over time I get better with it, but yeah, not so much in here a lot of times.
Actually, the podcast app I use is Overcast, and it actually has a feature that truncates silence.
Yeah, Pocket Cast has that too. Thank goodness, because I use it.
Some
always.
folks, man.
Oh yeah, yep, absolutely. But
There's also a. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I used trim silence and then also the just speed it up and not too much because I know people listen to podcasts super fast, but I can't handle.
No, I can't listen that fast.
I usually go
normal speed.
I got like 1.2 just to bump it a little bit, and it depends on the podcast too because some people are very slow, and that's okay, I guess. But there are times where it's just like, just too much. So. Little bit, so they refined it over time.
Yeah,
I think
the Overcast actually recently added a skip intro and outro feature. So that if you listen to a certain, like if you can, it's per podcast. So if your podcast usually has an intro that's, you know, the set intro of like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever, you can tell it to start playing 10 seconds ahead of the beginning. So it just completely skips all like the bumper music and the ad reads and all that kind of stuff.
So Hank asked a question about chaining plugins in Audacity. And yeah, Audacity isn't real time where you're, so in the background, I've actually got Carla open and this is what you're talking about. So I've got some plugins chained together. So I'm running Jack right now on the system for my audio with Pulse Effects, the Pulse Effects plugin. So I've still got access to my, not Pulse Effects, my Pulse audio. So I've still got access to the Pulse devices because of the way it chains them together. So if I look at my my bridges here for also audio, I've got also to Pulse audio to Jack. So it actually kind of feeds through in that chain. And then using something like Carla, you can come in and add different plugins to your rack, and then when you plug them in, like Hank is saying, you just and sort of chain them together. Now you can do that in something like Audacity or Reaper or Mixbus or any of the ones that use Jack, because that's the way they apply their filters. But something like Audacity is actually more of a, if I'm recording in here, I don't have the ability to have any of these effects be real time. This is all stuff that you do after the fact. So I'm taking recorded audio and then applying effects after the fact. It's kind of like the difference between getting your camera focused just right and setting options on the camera for your f-stop and your white balance and aperture and all that stuff versus doing it in Photoshop or GIMP or whatever later. It's kind of the same analogy here. Something like a DAW or using Jack on your system, you can chain those together real time. So adjusting the camera, and then something like Audacity is more of an editing tool. You can still record in here, but when you're recording, it's just whatever your mic or the audio sounds like. So hope that makes sense. It's been a very long, arduous process for me to put all these pieces together, and I'm still nowhere close. If you guys are really interested in Jack and how all this stuff works, go check out Linux Gamecast. Ven on there is like the, Zen master of Jack and all of this stuff. Go look at his version of this, and it's just layer upon layer upon layer of plugins and inputs and outputs. And so I'm really just scratching the surface, but I'm happy that I've finally kind of figured out how this works, at least enough to get the things done I need to do. But yeah, Ven he's at a completely different level. Vince, I use Audacity just to record because of, like I said, I've already got these plugins in the background. Previously, before using Jack, I was just using Pulse Audio or Pulse Effects. And Pulse Effects, it's okay, but I've had a lot of like weird buggy issues with it where it'll duplicate audio. So if I have Pulse Effects running, a lot of times my microphone audio will be piping through desktop as well. If you guys remember my last stream, that kept happening on me where my desktop audio kept, like, you'd get an echo, right? Because you'd be hearing it on both channels. And also then I got that, it just screwed up my mic audio, and then I sounded like a robot or something weird like that. That was all Pulse Effects. And, you know, I don't know. Sometimes it works perfectly and sometimes it doesn't. And unfortunately for me, more often than not, it didn't. And it just got really, really frustrating because, like you saw in that last stream, it worked fine whenever I tested it. And then I go into a situation where I'm streaming or I'm on Zoom or I'm recording a video, something. And then I go back and something screwed up with my audio. So that's why I'm really making an effort to use Jack and try to get this stuff worked out. And the quality of the plugins and things out there are pretty amazing. So if you look at specifically this is a LSP plugin, but this is the compressor that I'm using right now. And this is just freely available and it's pretty spanky, right? I mean, you're seeing your real-time graph. When you adjust your thresholds, you can see where it's going to compress on you, and you can easily adjust all those things. The same thing with the expander. So this is a gate, essentially, so that when I'm doing things like I'll click, you won't be able to hear it. You know, I'm clicking my mouse in the background. You don't hear that because it's gating it at this threshold up here. Or I'm sorry, down here on the pink line. That's my level. And you can just easily see it and adjust it as you're going. And this is the exact quality of something in a fully proprietary, many hundreds or thousands of dollars piece of software. And here it is in this LSP plugin. And it's pretty fantastic. So, I've been pretty happy with it so far. But it is a lot of work. It's not just install and click a couple things and go. It's a lot. You know, I've got Cadence down here running my Jack session. And you have to set up all of your configuration options and, get your buffer size right and your sample rate, on and on and on, just to get started. And then from there, work with these. This comes from the KX plugins, both of these KX Studio plugins. So, I don't know if that answered your question, Vince, but audio isn't easy on any system. I guess people could say, well, Windows handles this better, Mac handles this better. I think there are better packaged solutions, maybe things that make it easier in terms of shortcuts. But I think people struggle with audio just in general. It's just not easy. If you're just chatting, gaming, chatting on Discord, like whatever, good enough audio is good enough. And then as soon as you go to actually make content or compare it to someone else's audio, all of a sudden it's like, wow. Like on Biddle this week, even with Rocco being sick, he sounds great because he has a good setup. He has a much better microphone than I do. And, all of that makes a big difference. So... Hank, my Pulse config I use is on GitLab for those interested, but the settings in the config I'd consider optimal. Yeah, I've played with Pulse, and I know Adam's done some stuff with Pulse where he was doing different, what do they call them? Where you were syncs. Yeah, you're able to pipe your audio off into different syncs and then be able to separate them out and things like that. So there's a lot you can do with Pulse. I'm not saying Pulse is to blame for any of this. I just, when I went and looked, the tools available for sort of moving into that pro grade audio, just everybody seems to put more effort into Jack in terms of that. So And I'm curious to see if I think it's Pipewire. If that's going to be an interesting, because I guess it kind of works like Jack in a lot of ways, without some of the downsides to Jack. I think Fedora is going to be working on that in the next few releases. So yeah, we'll see. All right. Oh yeah, I'm editing a podcast. I forgot about that a little bit. So they refined it over time, and yeah, I think it's gotten to a point now where it's comfortable. There's enough space. It's, you know, you can set where it shows up on the screen, not just top left, top right, top. You know, you can actually say like how far away. I want to, because it's KDE, of course. You got to have this types of settings in there. It just drives me crazy. I can't stop myself. Every time I'm like, I'm not going to. It's KDE, of course. You got to have it's in there.
Pretty annoying, you know?
Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. I can't tell you. I don't mind when other people do it nearly as much, but I say it so often. I was listening to Biddle just to go back and check my audio, and I said it 7 times in 15 seconds. It was so frustrating. I'm trying to actively train myself to be a better, more succinct, you know, better metered, sort of gauged speaker. It's really not easy. The settings in there.
It's also those options are just a beautiful thing to have. I mean, it really allows you to really, you know, set things, because, you know, if you have a workflow or also those options are just a beautiful thing to have. I mean, it really allows you to really, you know.
Yeah. This is the kind of stuff, like it's little, but
it's also those options just allows you to really, you know, set things.
Just taking that one.
You know, if you have a workflow or a desktop layout that the default position doesn't work for you for whatever reason, it's nice to be able to push that someplace else. And I have one.
There's a Ask Reddit thread. The title is "Bank Tellers of Reddit. What is your plan if someone sends bees through the tube?"
You know what? If I was a bank teller, I wouldn't have thought of it, but now I'd be paranoid every day.
Yeah, so someone's just gonna put some bees in there.
That's right. What's in that bag? Yeah. Sorry, ma'am. I'm gonna have to step back.
Yeah.
I think I can hear buzzing
in the lower right-hand corner now.
Don't open it, Dave.
I thought that was really pretty fantastic. Another feature that I really like in the lower. Another feature that I really like. Wait, hold on. I just lost my train of thought. Sucks being an idiot. Oh, another feature I really like
most self-deprecating person I have ever met.
The GTK.
Easily, yeah.
And I'll always do.
Sucks being an idiot.
I'll grab these little sound clips and then send them to him just to annoy him, I guess. He thinks it's funny, but
sucks being an idiot.
Sucks being an idiot. It's just like I love another
you, feature that I really like.
You listened to Loveline back in the day, right? They used to like take little clips out of context and use them as drops.
Always.
You need to build like a soundboard of that kind of stuff, right?
Well,
Sucks to be an idiot.
Here's a secret for people. I'll do stuff like that. I'll grab this and I'll put it under the music at the end. Just as it's swelling up, you may hear something. And like 2 or 3 times I've put in there just dumb thing. I mean, it's usually more interesting than Sucks to be an idiot, but it'll be just something silly like that. And I do it just for Nate and I, because we're the only ones that actually hear it and know what it says. But that's like a little Easter egg. That's what I do when I get bored from editing this for hours at a time.
Oh, another feature I really like.
Oh, there, you remembered.
I
could take out the O.
Fantastic. Another feature I really like is the how it's the GTK.
Man, say it ain't so.
Is the how it's the GTK. Jam.
Oh, just all of Weezer. I know I'm a 90s kid, but still.
Weezer's great.
Weezer's unbelievable. Because it is the right blend of, you know, hard guitar, wailing, lead guitar. It's all good stuff. A little bit nerdy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
The feature I really like, the GTK theme, how it transfers over now.
They're a band that like you could easily transport into their mom's basement and it wouldn't be out of place, yet they're really good.
Yeah, right. They've managed to maintain that authenticity without, as they've gained popularity, without becoming, pandering.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So no,
they're like probably the only band I can think of that are successful and have a great sound, yet you're always like they haven't been discovered yet. Like that's how their music always sounds to me. Like, like I'm the only one who's ever heard this kind of thing, right?
Right, like you discovered it. Yeah, exactly. Listen to this tape I found. Yeah.
It's called Green Album. Like,
right.
Enjoy it.
Right. Yeah, I think I can think of so many bands that I really enjoyed their first few albums, and then once they gained some amount of success, they just went off that, sharp jumping adventure that they go through. It's fine. I see the same thing with YouTubers a lot too. I don't know what the correlation is.
Totally. Yeah. They start out humble. They start out kind of real and relatable, and then next thing you know, they're just making clickbait and Trump rally videos.
Well, one that really disappoints me, I think I've talked about it before, but I used to love Unbox Therapy. Like he was funny, and I just appreciated the way he was a blend of silliness but actual information.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's just he's an idiot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't even try anymore because now he's a personality. It's not about the information, it's about him. And yeah, it's a shame because I'm sure he's still the same person, but he's become a personality, a persona. And that's, I don't know. It's a shame.
The feature I really like.
It's funny you mentioned YouTubers. There's I can't remember what his actual channel was. I just know his name is Greg Salazar. But he recently, he has a lot of followers. 504,000, right? So 500,000 followers or subscribers. He tweeted, "Newsflash, not all YouTubers with decent followings are millionaires, and you don't need $1 million to appear wealthy. It's about proper money management. It's about saving. It's about investing. It's about diversifying priorities." And he posts on there, it says, a thing where a guy says, "This proves YouTubers make entirely too much money." He says, Here's a wake-up call. I made less than $3,000 from YouTube last month."
Oh, I'm sorry. You poor soul.
Well, I mean, admittedly, that's kind of like, I don't know, like the middle to lower end of middle class, though, right?
Hey, I mean, I guess if that was your only gig.
Yeah, that is the thing. Like, that's his job, right?
Well, but still, I mean, so I think a lot of perks come along with that, though, depending on what you do. Because think about the gear channels or review channels and stuff. I mean, they're getting all the gear all the time just sent to them.
Yeah, correct.
And if he's only making $3,000, like that's probably on him because there are lots of ways to, get sponsorships or, do different things. So,
but so his point is more, he's saying that, being a YouTuber doesn't necessarily make you, Lamborghini and mansion, right? He's saying, and he goes on to say, like, don't teach your kids to become YouTubers. Teach them to learn a trade. Teach them to prioritize school. Teach them about finance. Like, that being a YouTuber is, even the successful ones are such a small percentage of all of the YouTubers out there, right?
Well, it depends on how you define success. If you enjoy doing that more than you would enjoy doing a normal job, a career, if you enjoy being creative and in control of your own work, then that's as much a success as monetary compensation. Now, again, I'm not going to say that $3,000 is that bad, honestly. I mean, it depends on what your current job,
just keep in mind he hasn't paid taxes on that yet. So
Oh, no, I get it. That's just gross. I understand that. I'm just saying that, well, I don't know. If you're doing something full time and you're literally putting all your effort into it and you're not getting a large return, especially if you expect one, then that's maybe not the thing for you. But if if you do it because you enjoy doing it and it picks up steam, and I like the more gradual approach. It's the people who are like, I'm going to be a YouTuber. I don't get that mentality.
And that's what he said in the further tweets. He says, learn a trade or go to school, learn about finance. Then, if time permits, start documenting your work. Take the time to teach via video the things you've learned and go from there. He says, Twitch won't make you wealthy overnight, neither will YouTube.
Well, and again, defining wealthy, if you're not going to be, it's very unlikely you will be one of the blockbuster success stories. But if you start a popular channel and you're consistent and people like your content, then it can be lucrative. And, it depends on the direction you go. I mean, there are so many people that create amazing content that have hundreds of subscribers. Right? And I'm not just saying like amazing in that literally like highly polished, like you could tell they've spent a huge amount of time on it, obviously because they wanted to. And, and so, but then you have YouTubers that are even just personalities on social media in general that do nothing of real interest. They're just, it's paparazzi, it's celebrity, it's, let's see the next thing that, what is it, PewDiePie or whatever. Like it's,
So I don't think his issue is that don't pursue a passion, right? But it's the idea that like a lot of younger kids these days want to just become YouTuber, like instead of anything else. Not necessarily because they're creative or whatever, but like, hey, I don't want to work at a normal job. I want to make $1 million making videos, right? They want to be the Mr. Beasts. They want to be the PewDiePies. It's like, there's sure shoot for the stars, but at the same time, like, if they put all their eggs in that basket, and it's the same thing as like, I'm going to go to school and I'm just going to become a professional basketball player. Well, the NBA can only hold a finite amount of players, and it's nowhere near the amount of people who want to play basketball. Right? So, that kind of thing, right? Like the chances of you becoming a professional basketball player are really small. Same thing with YouTube, right? Like the chances of becoming a really successful YouTuber in terms of monetization, not anything else, is actually pretty small. And it's getting worse and worse because more and more people are jumping on the platform. And the whole idea of being viral is the important part. It's not a matter of you can grind. You can put in the effort, daily posts and all that. You can get somewhere with that. Don't get me wrong. But the people who blow up huge, they're the ones who have some kind of viral hit or something. And or people who come from another platform, right? So like if you gain a lot of people on Twitch, for example, then you're like, hey, I made a YouTube channel, you basically automatically get a big YouTube channel just by nature of the people coming from one. Or just the same thing with all the Viners that came into YouTube, right? They already had huge followings on Vine, and so now they're big YouTubers. And people are like, wow, they're big YouTubers, they make a ton of money. It's like, yeah, but they spent the time on another platform, right? That kind of thing. I honestly don't think a full-time YouTube, okay, $3,000 a month it's not small, right? You're not poor, you're nowhere near it, but $3,000 a month for probably 10 to 12 hours of work, all the like full-time YouTube's a lot of work because it's not just filming and all that. It's doing the financials behind the the deals, especially if you're like one of those review channels, right? You have to spend time talking to these manufacturers, talking to different PR people. Like there's a lot of work hours, and I just don't see that like your salary, so to speak, your hourly rate is not that high. But again, like you said, if you want to do something creative, if you want to be in control of your work, your creation, Yeah, sure. Have at it. Just don't go in expecting to be a millionaire is what he's saying.
And I think it's good to temper people's expectations with stuff like that.
And he's saying it's more important to learn how to manage money and saving and investing and whatnot than it is to, try to become a millionaire YouTuber who buys a Lamborghini.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my.
What up, Eric?
Yo. Streaming. How you doing?
I'm all right. Trying to figure out my data structures lab.
Fun. All right. I'm going to take a quick break. I just need like literally 2 minutes, but I'm going to come back and do some editing. So I'm going to just mute everything for a minute.
All right.
I'll be right back. All right. So let me jump back to editing for a few minutes. And then I think I'm going to edit for a few more minutes. I'll show you what a finished project looks like just so you can see the end result. And then I'm going to probably jump off so I can finish editing this. I really want to get this done tonight. And so, all right, let me just run through a little more here. I seem to have killed my audio. Great.
I had previously another feature I really like, the GTK theme, how it transfers over now from whatever you have on the plasma side. On the whatever you have on the plasma side, on the Qt side. So I had previously made a theme side. So I had previously made a theme, a GTK theme to match my plasma theme. A GTK theme to match my plasma theme. And it wasn't great. It was mediocre at best. There were some things I didn't like about it, but not knowing enough about how to tweak GTK, I didn't really.
All right, so I'm trimming out, like I said, just the pieces of audio that I just don't want to have in there because I'm trying to just maintain a continuous flow of conversation. I'm not trying to be overly I guess have too heavy of a hand, but I just try to trim those out, and then I highlight that section and compress, just take out some of the silence. And that's just generally what I do as I go through here. There's some sections where sometimes the cuts are really easy because there's silence between them. Sometimes I actually have to literally come into the waveform and pick a spot, cut that off, and then you have to sort of round off this cut or else it's very abrupt. So I'll do like a fade out effect. There's some tricks I've learned as I've come through here, but so that's the basic process. And then once I get all of the sections edited down and have all the segments, then I will come back and put in the music track. So what I'm going to do is just actually show you the previous episode and how that looks. I think it's this one. All right. So yeah, this is the same thing essentially from the last episode, but then down here we have a audio track, a music track. So this is the intro music and then all of the little sort of bumpers between the segments. And that's another reason I put these markers in here, is that it makes it easy for me to come back and then know where to, stick these in. So if I come back to the beginning and look, so that's my music and then fading into the intro.
Welcome.
And then between the different segments, lots of different ways.
For sure. And so I appreciate that particular video there. I really do.
With the bumper music and then obviously the outro and the end music. So that's essentially a finished episode, what that looks like in here. And then I'll export this as a FLAC file and upload it to Auphonic. While that's processing on Auphonic, I'll come back and do the notes, like I mentioned, pick out the chapters, write the notes, and then upload everything to Fireside, get that all set up, and then publish it. So I created a post on all of this on Destination Linux Network Discourse Forum, and I estimated that it took me somewhere between, I don't even remember now. I have to go back and look. Yeah, here it is. And of course it wants to open Inocular for some unknown reason. And what did I put? So somewhere between like 14 and 17 and 27 hours total. But this is listening to all the shows, so 48 hours. I'm listening to all of the DLN shows and not just listening passively. I'm actually listening for things that I'd want to bring up and talk about, create the show notes, record the show, miscellaneous export, all the sort of file handling part of it, edit the show. So the editing is usually somewhere between 4 and 8 hours to do this. And it's because I'm so meticulous, and I recognize that a lot of people just record what they record, and unless there's huge gaps or major like noise or problems, they just kind of leave it as is. And I like to have it a little tighter. And I'm also trying to stick to a, half hour shorter format. I know I don't hit that very often, but it's kind of tough to do. And then the post-production, another 2 to 4 hours. So that's where I kind of get to that 14 to 27 hour total. And so that's what goes into each episode of, for us at least, DLN Xtend. So, all right, well, I'm going to do this probably more often and just stick to, strictly the editing. And if, like I said, if folks are interested in Audacity and want to learn how this process works, I'm happy to, dig into more detail. But I think you kind of get the gist of it. It's really just about us recording our audio separately, bringing it in, lining it up, and then just going through and picking out the things I don't like and don't want, and just kind of going from there. And it takes the time it takes. Sometimes it's actually pretty quick. We've gotten good. The last 2 episodes, we actually only recorded about an hour of audio, so it was much easier to edit down. This show, we had so much to cover. We just had a lot of different topics and things like that, so it just took longer. And so Anyway. All right. Well, I don't know if you guys have any other questions or anything, but I think I'm going to go ahead and just jump off and get this done. But I appreciate everybody coming in and saying hi. And I hope everybody has a great night, and I will see you again very soon. All right. Thanks. Take care, everyone.